Mom, Dad, I humbly suggest you save some money and shop Amazon for back to school. It's for my growth, meaning my body's growing at an alarming rate. And clothes you buy me this year will be very small very soon. Plus, the clothes I love today will be out of style tomorrow. But at least your wallet doesn't have to be my fashion victim if you shop low prices for school at Amazon. Hopefully this is helpful. Amazon. Spend less, smile more.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Dr. Psych Mom Show. Today, we're going to be talking about 5 things to say when your wife is mad. And this is very, very important because many men have no idea how to defuse conflict and how to get out of this cycle where it seems like everything you say just ramps things up more. And by the way, a lot of the reason that guys may not know that is because they grew up seeing a lot of conflict in their home, when they were little. And so therefore they have no idea that fights actually could be stopped. Before I get to that with the practical 5 pretty practical, quick things to say that you can actually memorize, I must tell you to subscribe. Most recent subscriber episode was Don't Take Tracking Your Wife's Ovulation to Some Dystopian Novel Level, guys. Because that's what I see is people that are tracking their wife's ovulation, which of course you should do kind of somewhere in the back of your mind, but making every bit of your plans around it is foolish and makes her feel like she is some sort of sex robot that you're programming. And nobody likes that feeling, least of all women, Maybe men want to be somebody's sex robot, but women don't. Okay, so let's move into 5 things to say to your wife when she's mad. So first of all, when you're in a fight, you may think that your wife started it and that she's doing the whole thing, but it's not possible to fight by yourself. Even if let's say that she, quote, started the fight, in her mind, she probably didn't. There was probably something that made you start, quote unquote, the fight because you were distant or cold or uncaring or whatever. People who are healthy, even remotely healthy people, do not just start conflict for the fuck of it. They just don't. And therefore, if they, quote, start, it is because they think that you, quote, started before, just like how your children feel. That's how your kids feel with siblings. They always think the other one started, and neither one of them is right or wrong. People usually do not just start out of nowhere. There is a background, there's context, there's history, and that is what both people are responding to. So if you're the guy who always acts like Mr. Victim because she, quote, starts, try to think about it differently. Unless she is really, really disordered, in which case you picked her, you're with her, so it's probably... The fact is that you're both probably disordered. She is fighting with you because she is hurt and she feels that you hurt her. So both people feel hurt in that situation, right? So, okay, what's the first one? And I do have a post out about this with the same title, so you can totally just go find that post if you're somebody who, is not okay with the Spotify transcript, which is a wonderful feature, by the way, because now you can see the transcript on every Spotify episode. So that's pretty cool. I don't know why you would be listening to this if you don't like to listen to things. But anyway, if you like reading more, then this one is actually a post. All right. So the first one is our relationship is more important than this fight. I talk a lot about using this line in other things that I've written, and it really, really is useful. And people have used it to very good effect. It, of course, has to be true. And if it's not true, then you have to think about why you are somebody who gets so wrapped around the axle for, individual grievances versus actually thinking that the relationship is more important than this fight. But most people do genuinely think that. Whatever the hell you're fighting about, it is probably not as important to you as being happily married overall. And by saying this outright, you are literally telling your wife, I find you important. I find our relationship important. It's very hard to be mad at somebody who is saying this to you directly. And it kind of instead of going back and forth inside the box of the argument, you are creating a new frame. You're going outside the box. And that in and of itself can often de-escalate conflict, just like a whole new way to look in at the situation, right? Okay, next. I love you. Now, this one should be something that you say to your wife a lot. Some guys who are not very emotionally adept think that you're not even supposed to say I love you every day, or think like it loses its value. That's not true. You should at least tell your wife that you love her every day, and if you're not, then start. But also in the middle of a conflict, some guys think that this is like not the right time or place, or they're not feeling very loving in this moment, so why should they say it? You're saying it because, again, who cares about this one argument? Whatever it's about, it's hopefully not as important as the fact that you love each other. And so you are trying to create a culture in your home in which it is understood that the relationship itself is, in fact, more important than each individual fight. So when you say, I love you, even when you're mad, it shows her that you are somebody who can see the bigger picture, and she feels important and loved. It's very hard to fight with somebody who's saying, I love you. And a lot of times guys do not feel it in the moment. Big shit if you feel it in the moment. You can go outside of yourself and understand that you feel it. You'll feel it tomorrow. You'll feel it later. You felt it earlier. You may not feel it right now, but who cares? You do feel it, so therefore it is not disingenuous. You don't just report on the constant state of your emotions. There are things that you say that are, represent other states in the future or the past. So if you love her at all, then now in the fight is a good time to say it when it can de-escalate conflict. The next one is, I don't want to fight with you. So, you think this is obvious, but it takes two to tango. So if you are fighting with her, then she may not think it is obvious that you don't want to fight. She may think, in fact, that the only way to get anything done with you is to fight, which is a lot of how women think with men with ADHD who actually only pay attention. Their brains only turn on when they're stimulated. It's almost like they're asleep, just sitting there on the couch, like nearly almost asleep because they're bored. And the only way to get the guy to pay attention at all is to say something that he can fight with. And if you don't think this is true about yourself, but yet you have ADHD, you should read the book, The ADHD Effect on Marriage, because this is a very, very common pattern where people with ADHD, they only kind of activate when stimulated. And the stimulation can often be a fight. So if the woman says, like, he doesn't listen to me unless I'm upset, frequently the guy has ADHD and she's right. He doesn't listen to her unless she's upset. It's not like a purposeful thing on his end, but it is true. All right, the next one is, I'm sorry. Of course you should apologize. You should apologize for whatever your contribution is. If you are somebody that has a lot of trouble with apologizing, that's probably because you never saw it modeled in your family growing up. And parents did not say, I'm sorry to each other. Or you saw that it was a thing that people said to each other and they didn't mean it. So they'd be like, sorry, basically like, sorry, you're mad. That's not an apology. Saying, I'm sorry you're mad to somebody who's mad at you is not an apology. And you want to own whatever your part was in the conflict. So if you think that she started with you out of nowhere, that's not going to, these things kind of build on each other. So you got to get rid of the idea that like she's just some random crazy woman who starts with you out of nowhere because she's a lunatic, because then you will never say I'm sorry, because you'll always feel this aggrieved victim, what I call the professional victim, somebody who could always find a thing to be aggrieved about, Think about, what did you contribute to this fight? Did you bring your best effort and energy? Were you paying attention to her? Does she feel loved in general? Like, are you a perfect man? If you're not a perfect man, which you, at least intellectually you could understand nobody is, right? Then there's something to say that you're sorry for. And again, we're promoting a culture of apology. So very frequently, guys are super surprised when they leave my office and they're been told to apologize, that the woman comes forward and apologizes as well. Even women that they say, oh my God, she never apologizes. Well, maybe you never apologize in a real way. Maybe your apologies are always like, all right, I'm sorry you're so upset, which isn't an apology, obviously. And the last one is, what can I do to make this better? So some guys say that they say that, and then she says, why are you giving me the emotional labor of having to figure that out? Well, listen, I mean, if she says that, then, you could just knock that one off of the list. But for most human beings, if you say something like that and they are committed to the relationship, they will come up with something. Maybe in the moment they'll say, I don't know, nothing, right? But then later they'll come back and say something. Or some people will say, well, what you could do is you could pay attention when I talk. I feel like you never listen to me. right? So then you would say, okay, that is something I could do. I could try to pay more attention, or I could try to be more sensitive, or whatever they're going to say. You may actually get useful information if you put yourself out there in a genuine way. So it's showing that you're willing to change and grow, that you know that you're not a perfect person already, that you're willing to accept feedback, which is very important for her respecting you. I talk about this when I talk about being coachable. It's super important. The most successful guys I work with are the most coachable guys. They love feedback. Every bit of feedback can make them better, and that's why they love it. And the people that struggle very much with relationships, career, friendships, etc., are the ones who cannot accept feedback in any domain, right? So if you could accept feedback at work, then think about why you can't accept it in a relationship. Of course, the relationship brings up different sorts of emotions, but it's probable that you never saw in your early life, you did not see parents who could give and take feedback, or you just saw it go one way. Like your father always criticized your mother, but she never said anything back, or she always criticized him, but he never said anything back. So then giving feedback seems very dangerous. It seems like something that you would only accept if you were a weak person. So if this is something that you think about feedback, then this could be an aha moment for you, that thinking about feedback could be completely different. It could be considered a chance to grow and learn. And people who are very successful in various domains of their life are very good at accepting feedback. So that's something to think about in and of itself, from this podcast. So those are 5 things. They are very, very, very small things to try, right? So we got, let's go back. A relationship is more important to me than this fight. I love you. I don't want to fight with you. I'm sorry. And what can I do to make this better? If you memorize those things, you can bring them out. You don't have to say all 5 of them. This isn't like, you don't say them one after the other. But you could say all 5 of them if it's a very big fight. And also sometimes guys are like, well, that's not what we usually say. So she's going to be like, where'd you get that from? That sounds fake. You say, I'm learning. I'm trying to learn about this relationship. I got it from a podcast. You like it? I mean, I know you think it sounds awkward right now, but do you think that it could be useful? Because I'm always trying, to make this marriage better because I love you. And that's what I always tell guys. Don't ever think that she's going to catch you out at doing something that you didn't think of it yourself. She already knows you don't know how to fight well. She's not stupid. So if you figure out how to interact in more, healthy ways, then also your children will see that and they will model after you. Whenever people are like, oh, my kids fight like animals, they fight all the time, they beat each other up, they steal from each other, or whatever. I'm like, what are they seeing at home between the parents? Usually they're seeing fighting. So they learn not to trust each other. I'm not saying that sibling bickering isn't normal. It's bickering for anybody who shares a space and shares resources to scuffle. But sometimes there's very bad, sibling conflict and bullying, etc. And in those cases, usually the children have witnessed conflict between the parents and are replicating that sort of dynamic within their own relationship. Sometimes that could be a very big aha moment. Or if there's no siblings, then it could be, does your child get along with people at school? Or are they always having problems with friends? Because if they're always having problems with friends, then it's probable that they are, again, seeing marital conflict, because the prime relationship that they see is not a calm relationship in which feedback is lovingly given and received, but it's something where people get very defensive, they're arguing, they are, silent treatment, they're slamming doors, they're basically acting very aggrieved and bitter and angry. And so then the child will learn to do that in their own relationships, everywhere from friendships to co-working relationships to, intimate relationships, and act that way with their own kids. So, that can be a huge motivator for many couples to not keep engaging in the same, unhealthy methods of conflict resolution, which are not resolving any conflict. So they're not conflict resolution, they're just fighting, which is something that I talk about in a different podcast when I say, these people that talk about, oh, you should fight in front of your kids because then they learn conflict resolution. When the hell do you resolve it? Most people don't. Most people just fight. Then they resolve it maybe later when the kid isn't around. So what did the kid learn? People suck. Relationships suck. I don't want to get married. That's what they learn. That's not what you're trying to teach them. All right. Well, I hope that this was useful for you guys, and that you can execute and use some of these strategies for better relationships in your daily life. That is my hope. And I will talk to y'all soon. Have a great day, guys.